I didn't become a scared person until after my son was born. Before that, I was the kind of woman who took midnight buses and ate food from carts that didn't have names. I lived on the top floor of an old building, and the lock never worked, and I slept like a rock and called it character. But something changes when you have a person who would stop existing if you leaned the wrong way. The world doesn't get scarier. You do. You notice more. Your skin turns into a sensor that won't shut off. My son is named Leo. He has dark hair that sticks up in the back like he's been rubbed with a balloon. He was a quiet baby. Everyone said I was lucky. He didn't cry the whole first night in the hospital. The nurse joked he was saving it up. We laughed. I took pictures with swollen eyes and the skin of my belly still loose. And when I look at those photos now, I can almost remember what my body felt like before I learned to carry fear like a second child. We moved when he was 7 months old. It wasn't a good time to move. There is no good time to move with a baby. But the place we were in had stairs that were trying to throw us down them, and the rent jumped high enough to make me choke. And there was this little house on a quiet street that looked like it would forgive us our mess. The front yard had clover instead of grass. The windows were low. It was one story. Old, but in a way that felt honest. The landlord was a woman with iron gray hair and a tired smile. Her name was Ruth. Previous tenants were a young couple with a baby, she said, walking us through. They left in a hurry. Job change. She said that without looking at me. I didn't think anything of it. Everyone leaves in a hurry now. It's the only way anything happens. There were 2 bedrooms and a small room that was almost a room, more like a box with a window. The previous tenants had used it as a nursery. There were stick-on stars on the ceiling. They'd tried to peel them off and given up. There were faint squares on the wall in different places where frames had hung. Whatever had been in them, they took. On the inside of the closet door, low to the floor, a line of pencil marks in increasing heights, names scribbled next to them. 3 names, actually. The same last name each time. The first name's different. I ran my finger over the lines. The top one was a good hand taller than me. Someone had been measuring kids here for a long time. Something about that should have comforted me. The idea of continuity. It did, for a moment. Then I wondered why the marks were in the nursery closet, and not in the hallway like in most houses. Like the height wasn't for show, but for keeping to themselves. We put Leo's pack and play in the small box room the first night. We called it his room because that sounded nice, like we were doing something for him, even though the air in there felt slow and a little heavy. It wasn't bad. Just the way some rooms hold on to warmth or smells too long. We set up the baby monitor on the shelf we would later use for diapers. The kind with a camera and a round little eye that glowed at night. The cord was too long and drooped. We were careful to tape it up along the wall so it wasn't within reach. You start seeing strangling in everything. The first night he slept there, he did his usual thing. He lay his head on my shoulder and let his body go. He is good at letting himself be carried. I laid him down, put a hand on his chest to make sure it was moving, a habit I had and still have. And it was slow and deep. I turned on the sound machine to the heartbeat setting because my sister swore by it and closed the door almost all the way. He woke once around the time the street outside goes quiet. He didn't cry. He made a sound like a question. I went in. He was on his back with his hands open. I put the pacifier back in his mouth. I went back to bed. The second night he woke up twice. The third night he woke up 5 times. By the end of the week I was a string pulled too tight. We blamed the move. Babies don't like change, everyone said. Give it time. We were giving it time when I started to notice a smell in the small room. It was faint, like something sweet that had gone wrong. Not rotten fruit, not diapers. Something I couldn't place. It would come and go. I'd stand in there during the day with the window open and it would be fine. And then I'd come in at night and it would curl inside my nose and sit there. I cleaned. I took the curtains down and washed them. The smell stayed. My partner Nate said it was in my head. It's old paint, he said. The heat makes it off gas at night. It's summer. It'll pass. He wasn't wrong often. He's the practical one. He builds shelves when we need them and fixes the fridge with YouTube videos. He has big hands that crack from washing dishes. He took over the night wake-ups on the weekends. He is not the bad guy in this story. Still, the way he said it made something small in me sit up. The way a person gets sure can be a kind of blindfold. Because the smell felt like a message, and I didn't know the language. I started sleeping on the floor of Leo's room. You can tell yourself you're doing it for the baby, but sometimes you do it for yourself, because you can't stand to be 2 doors away and not know why your heart is making that drum in your throat. I put a thin mattress down by the crib. I told Nate to take the big bed and rest. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, and then saw something in my face and didn't. I'll trade you tomorrow, he said. Okay, I said. I didn't think I'd take the trade. That night I woke to a rustle that wasn't the sound machine. I opened my eyes and didn't know where I was for a second, and then remembered the box room, the stars on the ceiling, the smell like old candy. The monitor camera eye glowed. Leo's breath made that soft snore he does when he's on his back. The rustle came again, like paper or dry leaves. I stood up slow. The room is too small for much standing. The crib takes up half of it, and the closet door doesn't open all the way because of the shelf we built, which is crooked if you look at it directly. The rustle seemed to be inside the closet. I opened the closet door and the sound stopped. I stared at the space like it could have answers. The high shelf had blankets and a shoebox with old screws in it. On the floor was a pile of clothes I hadn't folded. The pencil marks were on the inside of the door where I had seen them the first time, like little asterisms with dates next to them. The most recent had been a few months ago, the handwriting shaky. I felt the shape of the pencil grooves with the pad of my thumb and thought of someone's hand holding a child still enough to mark them. Everyone's growth looks steady when you draw it as lines, but in real time it's chaos. You turn away, and it happens without you. I almost closed the door when I saw the paper. It had sagged down from the gap between the door and its frame, where something could be stuck and not noticed. A corner of it had curled, and that must have been the rustling. The paper was thin and gray at the edges like it had been folded too many times. I pulled it out. It was a page torn from a notebook. Lines faint, no margin, the kind of thing in every grocery list drawer. Writing on both sides in a neat small hand. A list of times on one side. Not exact times. Not like clocks. More like words. Morning nap. After bath. The noise. When she says up and means the other thing. Fast breathing. the long quiet. The other side had sentences, not a letter. More like a record for someone who needed proof later. Some of it was crossed out. Some was underlined twice. I didn't recognize the feeling I had reading it. Not shock, not even fear. More like a path I didn't know I was on had suddenly become the only one, and I was already halfway down it. The sentences said, "She is asking for someone who isn't here." When I say who, she points to the corner. Sometimes she points to the closet. The cough, then quiet. Then cough, then quiet. Not like a sickness, like a rhythm. Like breathing against something, and then not. The smell is worse on warm nights. It is the smell from his shirt. I washed everything. It stays. I woke with my hand on the wall, pressing. I don't know how I got there. The crying stops when I hold the door. She started sleeping with her hands over her ears. It happened all at once. He said, "I am tired and it is in my head." I tried to move and couldn't. When I could, it was morning. She had climbed out of her bed and was asleep in the closet. The video shows nothing. The sound shows nothing. But it is there. If we leave the door open, the smell moves down the hall and makes me think of teeth. The bruise on her arm looks like fingers holding on. I am being careful with my words because I know how I sound. I am not like my mother. I am not like her. The last line was crossed out, and below it was written in smaller letters, "I am still here." I stood with the paper in my hand and the closet door open, and a draft of air on my bare feet, and I could not make my heart slow down. I could hear Leo breathe. I could hear my own blood. The smell was not sweet anymore. It had changed. Or I had. I put the paper back where I found it because it felt like the only safe thing to do. I pushed it into the gap so the corner stuck out just a little. I wanted to pretend I had never touched it. I took one step toward the crib and stopped, because the space in front of it seemed too close, like someone was standing there with their back to me. This is the part where you decide if you are a person who goes forward anyway, or a person who wakes their partner up and says, "Switch with me." And I was both, but one was stronger by a hair, so I went forward. I put my hand on Leo's chest. It rose. It fell. He stirred and turned his face toward the slats so his nose was pressed between two of them, and I moved him gently so his nose wasn't blocked. The hand I had on him shook. I told myself out loud, "He's fine. He's fine." My voice sounded by itself. I did not sleep the rest of the night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the pencil marks and the sentence about the bruise. In the morning, I told Nate I wanted to switch rooms. I tried to say it like I was throwing the idea out there, like I wasn't worried, like I was the reasonable one in the room. "Switch how?" he said. "Make the big bedroom his," I said. "We can take the small room for our bed. It'll be tight, but he'll sleep better in a bigger space." Nate rubbed his eyes. He had that look of someone who has learned to get by on less and less sleep and doesn't know where the bottom is. "We just move the bed," he said. "I'll move it," I said. "You go to work." "I'll do it. I'll get the neighbor to help me." "What neighbor?" "I'll figure it out," I said. I could hear how I sounded and I didn't care. It wasn't the smell. It was the way the closet had sucked the air in that room. It was the way the sentences had felt like a loop that was waiting for my words to drop into it. He looked at me then, really looked, and I could see the file he was making in his head, the one with my name on it that had words like hormones and sleep and stress paper clipped to it. I hated him for it, and then hated myself for hating him, because if he didn't keep a file, who would hold the other end of the rope? "Okay," he said. "We can try it." "Today," I said. "Okay," he said again, slower. We moved everything that day. I took the baby gate down and banged my ankle on it and swore. I took the crib apart and put it back together and checked the screws with my nail. I wiped the bars where his fingers had made little moons of grime. I vacuumed the corners of the big room where someone's hair had drifted and settled like dust. I propped the small mattress against the wall and pushed our bed frame through the door and turned it sideways and got it stuck and laughed until I had to sit down, and then cried, quietly, so Leo wouldn't see, which is ridiculous because he doesn't know crying is a thing yet. Our neighbor came over in the afternoon because I had left the door open, and she is the kind of person who comes when doors are open. Her name is Cheryl, and she has 2 boys who are older and run like they have rockets in their shoes. She carried the other end of the bed and told me about the woman who had lived here before we did, the one with the baby. She said she didn't know her well, but she was nice and kept to herself and left suddenly. "They left some stuff in the trash that day," Cheryl said. "I saw a baby monitor and a humidifier and a bunch of clothes in bags. I guess they didn't have room, or they didn't want them anymore." "Did you keep any of it?" I asked, immediately ashamed of myself for asking that, like I was hoping for a hand-me-down curse. "No," she said. "God, no. I have too much of my own junk, and I don't take things from the trash now. I did once and it bit me." "Bit you?" "Not literally," she said and laughed. She sat on the floor with her legs stretched out and held Leo while I screwed the crib mattress down. "He's cute," she said. "He looks like my Max when Max wasn't a tornado." "He's a good baby," I said, and meant it. I lay my cheek on the crib and smelled the wood. It smelled like wood. That first night in the big room, Leo slept 4 hours straight. I woke at the 2nd hour and the 3rd and the 4th and watched him breathe. I did sleep after that, and when morning came, the skin around my eyes didn't feel like paper. Nate made coffee that tasted like something other than survival. We looked at each other and tried on hope. It lasted 2 nights. On the 3rd night, he woke and would not settle. He wasn't crying hard. It wasn't that panicked thing that grabs your body by the ribs and shakes it. It was a low, frustrated sound, like he was trying to tell me, with a baby's tools, that something was wrong, and he didn't have the word for it. I picked him up and he calmed. I set him down, and he didn't. I sang the same 3 lines I always sing, because I can never remember the rest of any song now, and he didn't care. He just wanted the rhythm. He'd drift, and then jolt awake, like someone had dropped a book in the next room. I checked the thermostat. I changed his diaper even though it didn't need it. I tried a fresh pacifier in case the hole in the old one had gotten weird. He kept turning his head toward the door. Not the door to the hall. The closet door. The closet in this room is a plain reach-in. We had put his clothes there, tiny shirts on tiny hangers that made me smile when I hung them in those first weeks when I was leaking milk and crying at commercials. He watched that door like he was waiting for a person to come out. I told myself babies stare at everything. It's their job. They stare at light and shadow, and the space between your eyes. They stare at ceiling fans, and the place where the wall meets the ceiling. They don't know anything yet. They're trying to make sense of physics with the brain of a fish. Still, I put my hand on the closet knob. It was cool. I opened it and the sound machine breathed and the smell of clean cotton and baby powder came out. Nothing else. I shut it, and when I did, Leo's face crumpled and he let out a small, offended sob. Not scared. Offended. Like I had cut him off mid-sentence. I opened it again. Not because I thought anything would be there, but because I didn't know what else to do. He sucked the pacifier like he was trying to draw it into him, and his eyes got heavy. I stood there with my hand on the knob until my fingers numbed. When I let go, he opened his eyes again. I woke Nate. I told him, "Watch this," which I regretted as soon as I said it because it made me sound like I was about to perform a trick. He came in with sleep still on him, hair flattened on one side. I opened and closed the closet door. Leo calmed, then hectored, calmed, then fought. We did it 5 times. Nate looked at me like I'd taught the baby to do it on purpose. "Coincidence," he said. But he said it like he was trying the word on to see if it still fit. We left the closet open. Leo slept. In the morning, there were 4 small scratches on the inside of his right arm. They were thin and close together, just above the elbow where the skin is soft and pale. Not deep enough to bleed. Red enough to make my jaw go tight. He had scratched himself on the crib bars before. He had sharp nails I could never get short enough because he'd pull his hand away when the clipper came. And I am too careful to risk skin. But these didn't look like self-scratches, which wander and cross and have hesitation in them. These were neat, as if someone had put their hand on him and changed their mind at the last second. I told myself there are corners on everything. There are edges on blankets and threads that can catch and we never find them. I put a long-sleeve onesie on him even though it was warm. I held him while he drank his morning bottle and watched his throat work and let the fear pass over me like a wave that leaves you standing in the same place, but a little colder. At his 9-month checkup, the pediatrician asked if he had any bruises. I said no. I did not show her the scratches. I hate that I didn't. I hate it more now. But there is a part of your brain that stands between you and the systems that can take your child away. And that part of your brain knows that certain words open certain doors you cannot close. If you have never had to think about that, you are luckier than you know. "He's tracking well," she said, flipping through his chart. "He's quiet." "He's always been quiet," I said. "Lucky," she said. He wasn't behind. He wasn't ahead. He was the middle baby in the book, the one they show to make everyone else feel normal. He didn't clap yet. He made a sound for dog when he saw Cheryl's mutt, which was not a dog word but a Leo word, and that felt like progress anyway. In the waiting room there was a notice about sleep environments. It had pictures of cribs with nothing in them. No bumpers, no blankets, no toys. I looked at it and felt scolded, even though our crib was the most boring crib in the world. I felt like it was telling me to take my hands off my baby and trust the air. That night the smell came back. Not in the small room, in the big one. It was faint at first, like something you only notice because you are looking for it. I was standing at the dresser folding the tiny shirts. Leo was playing with a ring stacker on the rug, which he never stacks, just bangs the rings together like he's trying to make an idea happen. The smell strengthened. Sweet, then not. Like a memory of fruit that wasn't fruit. I went still. Leo didn't. He banged the rings. He tossed one and it rolled to the closet and hit the baseboard and fell with a light plastic tap. He said a sound that wasn't a word. He held out his arms. To the closet. I told myself, again, that babies point to everything. It is the truth. It doesn't cancel anything. I opened the door. It was only clothes and a shelf with diapers and a box with his outgrown newborn socks I can't bring myself to give away. The smell weakened, not because the closet ate it, but because whatever it was didn't need me to notice it now. That's how I thought of it. Not as something, but as something that didn't need me. I know that sounds like I am leaning toward a particular conclusion. I'm not. I'm describing what it felt like, which is different from describing what it was. When Nate came home, I didn't say anything. That's part of the problem. We start carrying things like they are private, and then they become private for real. And then you have a secret as heavy as a person. He tossed his bag down. He kissed Leo's hair and made the kind of OH sound men make to babies when they wish joy would catch. He smelled like the train. He poured a drink he said was one finger and was actually two. He said, "How was your day?" And I said, "Fine," because I didn't want to let the air out of him. That night I dreamed I was holding the closet door shut with my whole body. I woke with my hands pressed against the wall. My shoulders ached like I had been pushing a car. The door was open. Leo was asleep in the crib. His face was tilted up and his mouth was open, and I could see the shine of saliva on his lip, the small teeth that were trying to come through. I went to the bathroom and looked at my hands. The heels of my palms were red and a little abraded. It could have been from the floor. It could have been from anything. It didn't feel like anything. The next day I texted Ruth, the landlord, and asked if we could get the vents cleaned. "What vents?" she texted back. "The air vents," I wrote, "for the heat. And is there a carbon monoxide detector somewhere I'm not seeing?" She called me instead of texting. People who are older than me like to do that, and it always makes me brace. "There's no central heat," she said. "There's the wall unit in the living room, and the little electric in the hall. No vents. If you want to put a carbon monoxide detector in, go ahead. They're cheap. I had one somewhere. I think the last tenants took it with them." "Do you know why they left?" I asked, trying to make it sound like a social question. "Job," she said. "Out of state." "Did anything happen here?" I said. "Like what?" she said. "Like a leak," I said. "Or a smell." "A smell," she said, like she was tasting the word. "It's an old house. Old houses smell. You can paint." "Okay," I said. "Is everything all right?" she asked, and I could hear the alertness come into her voice like a bell. "Yes," I said, because I didn't want to be the woman who complains after a week. "We're settling in." "If you need anything, tell me," she said, and then after a beat, "If you decide it's not a fit, tell me that too." That last part sat with me. Not the words, the tone. The way someone says, "You can go if you need to," when what they mean is, "I won't hold you if you try to run." I bought the carbon monoxide detector. I bought 2. I put one in the hall and one in the big bedroom. They didn't make a sound, which is what they are supposed to do. But the quiet felt like it was taking someone's side. I almost took them back out, just to make a point that would only matter to me. I called my sister. She has 2 kids and a voice that knows how to put bandages on. I told her the baby wasn't sleeping, and we had moved rooms, and I was feeling off. Off how? She said. Like the house is a little wrong, I said, and immediately wanted to take it back. There's a category of wrong that gets people looking at you sideways. New places have ghost drafts, she said. The corners haven't learned you yet. There was a weird spot in our old place where the kids always cried. Turned out there was a nest of hornets in the wall. They knew before we did. So you're saying there are hornets in my closet, I said. I'm saying check for normal things first, she said. Mold, loose wires, bad outlets, air freshener plugged in somewhere behind something. People leave those everywhere and then wonder why they feel sick. I'll check, I said. Thank you. Also, she said, and her voice softened, you're not sleeping. That does things to your head. Remember when you called me crying because you thought the pothos plant was listening to you? That was week 3. I remember, I said. It was listening. Sleep, she said. Sleep anywhere you can get it. Put the baby in the stroller and walk until you both go out. Don't make the problem special if it isn't. It doesn't deserve the promotion. She was right. I knew she was. I put Leo in the stroller and walked the long block where the trees make a tunnel overhead. I counted mailboxes. I looked at the cracks in the sidewalk and thought about plants pushing up from the dark like hope if hope had roots. He dozed. I did not. But my head felt a degree cooler. That night, the monitor made a sound it doesn't make. Not a chime, not a beep. More like a breath catching. I was in the kitchen washing a bottle and the sound went through me like a wire. I ran down the hall. The screen was black. That happens. The camera glitches. But even when it glitches, it shows static, or the frame frozen. This was black, like an eye closed. I opened the door. The room was dark and shaped like it always is. The streetlight threw a faint strip across the rug. Leo was standing in the crib. He doesn't usually pull up without an incentive, like my face or a toy. He had his hands on the top rail, and his body pressed forward, and he was looking past me at the closet. "Hey," I said, and picked him up. He was warm and his hair was damp, and he clung to me like he had been waiting. I took a step back and leaned my shoulder into the light switch, and the room came on, soft, dim, a lamp we keep on low. The closet door was shut. I had shut it at bedtime. Leo's hand opened and closed like he was squeezing air. I wanted to look at the door and I didn't. I looked. It was a door. I told myself I was done with this. I told myself I was a grown woman and not a mirror for other people's panic. I put Leo in our bed. I put the rail up. I slept with his foot pressed into my side so I'd feel it if he moved. In the morning there was a bruise on my hip shaped like a heel. I was so happy to see it. It was clean pain. It came from something I knew. Nate said over coffee, "We can take a night at my mom's. She'd love it." "We just moved," I said. "One night won't break the spell," he said, and gave me a look that was a test and a kindness. We packed a bag and drove to his mom's, and she did love it. and she made food that tasted like she'd been believing I'd arrive hungry for weeks. She held Leo and said he had my eyes, which is something you say to mothers when you want them to feel themselves in their children, even if it isn't true. He slept 6 hours in her guest room. I slept 5. In the morning, the skin on my face felt like it fit. When we came home, the house smelled like dust and something underneath it. Not the sweet thing. A flat smell, like cardboard left in the rain, dried, and then used again. It could have been nothing. It could have been the house reminding us it would outlast us. I put Leo down for his nap in the big room because I wanted to show myself I could. He rubbed his eyes with his fists like a cartoon thief, and then let go. I stood there until his breathing turned into that low tide. I went to the small room. I don't know why. I told myself I was going to drag the mattress out in case we wanted to switch back again. I opened the door, and the air in there was not air I wanted. It wasn't foul. It was heavy and still, and it felt like it had been counted and set aside for a purpose. I thought of the paper in the closet, the sentences like stitches, holding a thing in place that didn't want to be held. I opened the closet in the small room. The pencil marks were there, rising. I put my finger on the last one, the shaky one. You can tell a lot about a person's hand by the way they draw a straight line. This one had stopped and started a few times. The date next to it was just before we moved in. Not long before. There was a name, but the paper had smeared it. It could have been Lila. It could have been Lily. It could have been Leo, which made no sense and made my stomach turn. The paper I had put back was gone. I hadn't told Nate about it. I should have. That's a sentence that will repeat in this story. I should have told. I should have shown. I should have said. But I hadn't. And now it was gone. And I understood in a hot rush that the disappearance of the paper was worse than the paper itself. I sat down on the floor in the small room where the carpet has a darker patch from some old spill. I let my head rest on my knees. I could hear the sound machine in the big room through the wall. That soft, false wind that makes you think of oceans that aren't there. I must have fallen asleep for a minute. When I opened my eyes, the room felt different. I smelled the sweet smell and thought, there you are. It wasn't like before. It was stronger, almost like syrup. My mouth watered and then went dry. I stood up too fast and the blood fell out of my head and came back with a rush. Leo made a sound through the wall, not a cry. A shape of sound like a ha, caught and held. I ran. He was sitting up in the crib, which he doesn't do from lying down without help yet. He was turned toward the closet. The closet door was open. I had shut it. I know I had. I picked him up so fast he frightened, and then pressed his face into my neck, which always feels like forgiveness. I put my foot out and pushed the closet door shut without looking in. It hit the frame and bounced an inch. I pushed harder. It clicked. I went down the hall and out the front door with him. I stood on the small cement step and felt the sun on my face like proof. Cheryl was in her yard with a plastic bin and a hose, washing the boys' soccer cleats. She squinted at me and then at Leo, barefoot in his pajama shorts with sleep lines on his cheek. "You okay?" she called. "Can I ask you something?" I said. And then my voice failed, like the part of me that talks had stepped back and put its hand up. She turned off the hose and came over. She's a big woman, strong arms, hair pulled back. She doesn't wear makeup, and her toenails are always bright blue. "You look like you need a chair," she said, and led me to one. "I found a note," I said, "in the little room. I put it back, and now it's gone." "A note," she said. She didn't ask me what it said. She just let me be quiet long enough to choose a piece of it I could carry out. "It was from the last woman," I said, "or someone before that. It sounded like she was having a hard time." "With the baby?" Cheryl said, and her voice didn't make it a judgment. "With the house," I said. "With the baby in the house." Cheryl scrubbed a hand over her mouth. "That tracks," she said, like she'd been holding a thought in and it had found a place to sit. "What do you mean?" I said. It wasn't a question. It was a rope. "She came over one day," Cheryl said, "when they were still here. She asked if my kids ever slept with their hands over their ears. I said no. She said hers did. I told her it was a phase because what else do you tell people when you have nothing that helps? After that, she waved less. The baby stopped coming out in the stroller. Then one day there was a truck, and then there wasn't." "Did she ever say anything else?" I asked. "She said she could smell something that wasn't there," Cheryl said, and gave me a look like she wanted to make sure we were standing on the same ground. I said that happens to me when I'm about to get a migraine. She said it was at night. I said maybe she should get her head checked. I shouldn't have said that. It sounded like I was saying she was... She let the sentence die. "She left a carbon monoxide detector," I said. Cheryl nodded. "She put it up one afternoon," she said. "She did it with a hammer and made 3 holes before it stuck." She was not the hammer type. She looked like she'd learned how to do that because there wasn't anybody else. People come by themselves more these days. We sat quiet for a minute. Leo made his soft clicking noise with his tongue, and I kissed his temple. A bee grazed the clover and moved on. A dog barked 4 yards away and stopped. The street held its breath. "Do you want to come over tonight?" Cheryl said. "Just for dinner. Give yourself a break from the walls." "Yes," I said. "Thank you." "Bring the baby monitor," she said. "We'll watch stupid TV and eat ice cream and pretend it's not all too much." We did that. It helped. The walls felt like someone else's job for 4 hours. The boys ran in a circle until they fell on the floor and laughed like pain was a joke. I held Leo and felt my shoulder loosen in stages. When we came home, the house smelled like the house. I slept hard. In the morning, there were 2 new pencil marks on the inside of the big room closet door. They were low, like someone had measured a child who was just starting to stand. They weren't in my handwriting or Nate's. The date next to them was yesterday's. I am telling you this as plainly as I can. I am not making it into a story with a twist, because living it was twist enough. I am not asking you to believe me. I am trying to set it down in order, and in order to do that, I have to put my hand on each thing and say what it was. The marks were there. The door had been shut when I went to bed and open when I woke. I put my finger on the new lines and they were faint and new, graphite not yet smudged. I did not call Nate. I did not call Ruth. I did not call anyone. I picked up Leo and put him in the car seat and strapped him in like we were going to the doctor. I drove to a hardware store even though I didn't know what I needed. I bought a door chain. I bought a smoke detector and a third carbon monoxide detector and a roll of painter's tape. I bought a baby lock meant to keep toddlers from opening doors, and I put it on a closet like I was keeping something in. When I got home, I put the chain on the closet. I did it badly and then took it off and did it better. I put the baby lock at the top so you have to press and slide at the same time. I closed the door and felt stupid, and then felt less stupid, and then felt stubborn. Nate came home and saw the chain and opened his mouth and closed it. He looked at Leo's arm where the scratches had faded to faint stripes. He looked at me, and I watched him put his foot on the ground I was standing on. He did it slowly, like testing ice. "Okay," he said. "Okay." That night we slept in shifts. He took the first half, and I took the second. When I came in at 2 a.m, no, not a number like in books, just middle dark, I found him sitting in the chair by the window with Leo asleep on his chest. His face had the stunned expression of someone who has just learned a new rule that no one warned him about. "The door," he said softly, nodding toward the closet. It rattled. "Like wind?" I said. "Like someone tried it," he said. "Look." He pointed. The chain was taut. Not all the way. Like it had been pulled and then released and hadn't gone back to rest. We stared at it. Two fools staring at a $10 piece of metal like it could tell us our future. I put Leo in the crib. He slept. I sat with my hand on Nate's knee like I was making sure he was attached. He fell asleep with his mouth open. I watched the chain until the light came. In the morning, the chain hung slack. There were new pencil lines. 3 of them. Lower than the last. No date. No names. Just measures of a thing that didn't happen. We did not talk about moving. That would be the sensible thing in a story, to say we left. People always say that when they read about bad houses. I would just go. They say it like you can always get another life the way you can get another quart of milk. We could not afford to break the lease. We could not afford a new security deposit. We could not afford to tell Ruth, "Your house is doing something to us." Because then we would be the problem, and the problem doesn't get its deposit back. So we stayed, and the days were days, and the nights learned a pattern. The smell came and went. The closet learned the weight of the chain. The marks bloomed like mold. I started keeping a record. I wrote down each time the door rattled, each new line, each scratch I found on baby's skin, each moment that didn't fit in the bucket marked normal. I wrote down the moments that were normal too, because I didn't want the book to be a net that only caught the bad fish. I wrote, "He laughed when the dog sneezed." I wrote, "He took the red ring and put it on the blue ring and looked pleased, and then took it off again like he'd remembered he wasn't ready." I wrote, "He slept 2 hours after the walk, and his hands were warm." The act of writing steadied me. It also made something else happen. I began to see that the moments didn't make a straight line. We want stories to rise. We want them to be the kind of curve you can trace with your finger. This wasn't like that. This was a set of returns, a house playing variations on a theme and waiting to see if we would recognize it. 2 weeks in, I found handprints on the inside of the big room closet door. They were small, child size, 4 fingers and a thumb, pressed flat and then lifted. Not greasy, not dirty, just marks, like someone had put chalk on their hands and clapped it off. Only the chalk was invisible, and the outline was the thing left behind. I pressed my own hand next to one. My palm swallowed it. The fingers were short and wide the way babies' fingers are. Leo doesn't stand long enough to leave prints like that. He doesn't reach that high. The prints were at my thigh. I cleaned them. I used a damp cloth and they didn't fight me. They smeared and went. I felt like I was erasing something important, and I kept going anyway because I wanted clean more than I wanted meaningful. That night, I dreamed of the small room closet. In the dream, I was inside it, sitting on the floor with my knees up, the way you sit when you're a kid, and you think the dark is a game you can win by not blinking. The door was shut, and the line of light at the bottom was thin. The smell was there, and also the sound. Not a rustle now, but a breathing that wasn't mine. I put my hands over my ears like the woman in the note had written, and like Cheryl had told me. And the sound came through my hands, and the door opened, and the light hit my face, and I woke with my heart in my mouth, and my hands pressed to the sides of my head, so hard my ears rang. I went to Leo. He was asleep with his hands up by his face, as if he were listening to something inside him. The next day, Nate set a camera on the dresser that wasn't the baby monitor. He didn't say he was doing it. I found it later, the lens small and patient. It watches the whole room and sends to his phone. He has a way he looks when he thinks he's doing something he might have to defend later. He had that look. "You could have told me," I said. "I didn't want to make it a thing," he said. "It is a thing," I said. He shrugged. "Then I'm doing the thing we do when there's a thing." We watched the footage that night. We watched Elle, the baby, fall asleep. We watched the lamplight breathe. We watched shadows that did what shadows do. We watched nothing for 23 minutes, and then at 24, the closet door eased and stopped against the chain, like something had pressed a cheek against the crack to listen. We watched the chain pull and release. We watched a line appear on the inside of the door. We watched it like people watching a storm from the porch. I felt the hair on my arms rise and flatten and rise. "Wind," Nate said softly. The word hung there, ridiculous and kind. "Maybe," I said. I loved him for trying to give us a kind word for it. We did not show the footage to anyone. We didn't even save it, because saving it would have made it more real. We looked at each other and then at Leo, who was chewing on a block with concentration you rarely see in adults, and we were both afraid for the same reason, that if we put the fear outside of us and named it, it would learn our names too. The next time the chain rattled, I stood up. I didn't open the door. I put my back against it. I stood there with my feet planted and my spine a plank, and I felt the pull come, a polite tug, and then a stronger one, not angry but determined, like a child who will not be told they cannot go where they've decided to go. I pressed. The tug stopped. I waited. I don't know how long. Long enough for my legs to ache. Long enough for the smell to deepen and then lift and then go. I went to the kitchen and drank water, and my hands shook so hard the glass clicked against my teeth. I wanted to call someone. I wanted to call the last woman, the one from the note, and tell her I had found it and then lost it, and ask her what she had done after she wrote, "I am still here." I wanted to ask what "here" meant. I wanted to ask if she had meant the house. Instead, I called Ruth and asked if the couple who had lived here before had left a forwarding address. "That's not information I can share," she said, which is what people say when they are protecting privacy or themselves or both. "I understand," I said, and I did. "Can you tell me if they had a girl?" I asked, "or a boy?" Silence on the line. Then, "A girl, I think." "Why?" "No reason," I said. "Just curious." "Is everything all right?" she asked again, that tone that says she will get in her car and come over with a practical expression and a roll of trash bags. "It's fine," I said, which wasn't true but was not a lie either. It was the category of truth you can carry to the door. That afternoon, Cheryl's boys knocked and asked if they could draw with chalk in our driveway. I said yes. They drew a road that went nowhere, and a sun in the corner like every kid's son. One of them drew a box and wrote home on it, and then rubbed it out with his shoe until his shoe was white. He laughed. I didn't. When they were done, I picked up a piece of chalk and drew a line inside the closet door, low, where the new lines had been appearing. I did it slowly. I signed a date I would not forget. I shut the door. I waited. I had to go make dinner and bathe the baby and fight him about the spoon and the brush and the diaper he thinks is a personal insult. And after all that, I opened the door and there was a new line an inch above mine. Graphite, not chalk. I touched it and it smudged onto my finger, and I put my finger in my mouth because I needed something to anchor me, and the taste was metal and childhood. I added another chain. If you're waiting for a reason, I don't have one better than the one you know. I am a mother, and something was measuring my child in my house without asking me, and I thought if I could slow it, I could stop it. And if I could stop it, it would get bored and go. Leo started pointing at the ceiling when I sang to him, not the fan. The corner where the two walls met, and a hairline crack made a crooked smile. He pointed and then put his hand on his ear. The first time he did it, I pretended I didn't see. The second time I said, "What do you see?" like he could tell me. The third time I put my hand over my ear too, and we sat like that, chanting our silence to whatever there was. I went to the library and checked out books about old houses. I told the librarian I am making ours safe for a baby. The librarian said, "They used to hide things in the walls." She said it like a fun fact. She said, shoes, cats, dried flowers, hair braided like rope. They thought it kept bad luck out, or in. I went home and stared at the walls and tried to guess where a person would tuck a shoe. I knocked on plaster and didn't hear a hollow. I wanted very much to find a shoe. I wanted something I could touch, a dusty thing that a human hand had put there. This is the part where I am supposed to tell you I found a shoe. I didn't. I found a patch behind the crib where the paint had been painted over again and again. I pressed it with my thumb and it flaked. I put my thumbnail under it and lifted and a strip came away like a scab. I stopped. I couldn't handle what I might find. A shoe would have undone me. Instead, I moved the crib to the other wall, even though it made the room tight and ugly. Leo watched me and clapped, which was new, and I clapped back like we had solved something. That night the smell didn't come. The chain didn't pull. I slept with my hand on Leo's belly until my arm went numb, and I didn't care. In the morning there were no new lines. I made oatmeal and danced with the baby to a song I don't even like, because the beat let me feel light. I told myself we had turned a corner. In the afternoon, I found the paper from the small room. It was under the big room crib, folded in half, the fold cracked white with use. I pulled it out like a magician with a scarf, and then felt angry at myself for using magic words for normal motions. I opened it. There were new lines on it, in a different hand, clumsy, with letters crowded. The words weren't ours. They were the same sentences, copied from the other side in a child's effort. Letters backward and then corrected, as if someone had leaned over small shoulders and guided a pencil from above. At the bottom, in a tied line of graphite, there was one more sentence I hadn't seen before, written in the neat hand. She says if I write it down, we will stay. The she wasn't clear. The pronouns weren't. That is how fear is. It moves pronouns around until you don't know who is doing what to whom. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket and told myself I would burn it. I didn't. I washed it on accident 2 days later, and when I took the clothes out, the machine smelled like the sweet thing, and I sat on the floor and shook until the cycle finished. Nate started sleeping on the couch. He said it was his back. He said the couch actually felt better. He said, "It's closer to the door." He didn't say that last part like a joke. He said it like a plan. We fought one night. Not about the thing. About dishes and money and the way he chews and the way I breathe through my mouth when I'm thinking. We fought and we got loud, and I saw the baby's eyes go wide in the doorway, and I thought, this is the worst thing in our house, and it is us. We stopped at the same time. We stared at each other and then at him. We both went soft. We both used our sorry voices and our sorry hands. We sat on the floor with our knees touching and let Leo climb us like furniture. It was better for a while after that. Fear can be fed by shame. When you take the shame off the table, fear has less to eat. We went 3 nights without a new mark. I let myself think we had broken it. Maybe we had not given it what it wanted. On the 4th night, Leo woke with a cry that had words in it. He doesn't have words yet, not really, but this had a shape that felt like no, a drawn-out open sound like he was pushing it through something. I went in. The closet door was shut. The chain was slack. The room smelled like soap. I almost laughed. I was so relieved at the normalness. I picked him up and he arched, body stiff, and turned toward the closet and held his hand out flat, palm up, like asking. Not reaching. Asking. I said, "No," and he cried harder. I said it again. I put him down, and he slapped the mattress with his hand and looked at me like I had betrayed a plan we had made together without words. He does not look at me that way. Even when I am slow with milk or answer wrong when he asks for the thing I can't know, he looks at me like the world is a good idea, and I am part of why. This was different. This was not him, or it was him wanting something I wouldn't let in. I opened the closet door before I thought about it. It swung and hit the wall and stayed, and the smell came. Not the sweet, not the soap, but something like breath in winter, visible. He stopped crying. He held his arms up. I didn't hand him to the closet. I stood there like an idiot with my hands useless and my heart breaking, because I could feel it. The thing he wanted was to go where I could not go, where I would not go, where my job was to stand and refuse. I closed the door. He cried. I held him and he fought and then gave up and put his face in my neck, and his body told me he was sorry, even though he had nothing to be sorry for. We slept like that in the chair, bones stacked wrong, but safe because we were stacked together. In the morning, there were pencil lines not just on the inside of the closet door, but on the outside, as if something had gotten impatient or bored and decided to include us in the joke. They were higher this time. My height. Written next to them was a word I don't want to write because it's my name and I don't want to give it that. Nate saw them and said nothing for a very long time. Then he said, "We have to leave." His voice was very plain. "We can't," I said. "We have to," he said. "We can't," I said, and my mouth did something, and I realized I was smiling. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone in a car going off the road who realizes the physics is not in their hands anymore and laughs because the air feels different when the rules change. "We'll sell the car," he said. "We'll call my cousin. We'll sleep in the living room at my mom's. We'll do whatever. I'm not staying." "Okay," I said, and meant it. The word felt like air. "Today," he said. "Okay," I said again, and looked at the baby and felt a wall in me come down. We packed like people in a story after all. We threw clothes in bags and left books on shelves and took the photos off the fridge and left the magnets and grabbed the file folder with our names on it like it was the heart of our life. I folded the paper from the small room and put it under the coffee maker, under the water tank, a place you wouldn't think to look unless you were cleaning. I wrote Ruth a note that said, "Thank you. We have to go." I didn't say why. I knew how that would sound. I put it in her mailbox with the keys. Leo fell asleep in the car seat before we were out of the neighborhood. I turned the mirror so I could see his face, and I saw my own eyes in it too, small and bright, and not mine. Nate held the wheel like it could make promises. We drove. We didn't talk. We let the road put distance between us and the house because sometimes distance is all a problem respects. At his mom's, there was the smell of coffee even in the evening. There was the couch that had been Nate's when he was 12, with the impression of his long-ago body in it. There was the sound of a TV on low, always on. There was a quilt with a pattern I recognized from photos of Nate's grandmother. There was the gentle pressure of a house that has had babies in it and did not break. We slept all three in the same room, the monitor on even though we were 2 feet away, ridiculous and necessary. I woke in the night with my hand on Leo's chest, and it rose and fell, and my body let go of something I had been holding so long I thought it was part of me. In the morning, the porch was bright. The air felt like weather and not like a decision. Nate made eggs and burned the first try, and we laughed like people who had come up from underwater. We stayed a week. Ruth called once and I let it go to voicemail. She said, "I got your note. Call me. We'll sort it out." Her voice was careful like a person stepping over a sleeping cat. I didn't call back. I couldn't say the words. At the end of the week, I went back to the house by myself to get the last of our things. I told Nate I'd be an hour. He wanted to come. I told him to stay. I don't know why I did that. Maybe because I needed to see if the house would show itself when I was alone. The door stuck the way it always did. The air inside was hotter than outside. The smell was there and not there, like a person who stands in a doorway and steps back. Dust had settled on the coffee table. The chain on the closet door in the big room hung slack. I went into the small room. The paper I had put under the coffee maker was on the floor, unfolded. The words had bled where it had gotten wet, not from water, not like water. The last line had changed. The letters were thicker, done over, done again, like someone wanted to make sure they would not fade. It said, "I am still here." And then, in a different hand below it, small and shaky, "We are too." I stood in the hall and swayed like a person on a boat until the motion of my body matched the motion inside me. I went into the big room and opened the closet door. I meant to say something. To the closet, to the air, to the pencil lines. I meant to say, "We're leaving." I meant to say, "Find someone else." I meant to say, "Find no one. Let it be no one." What I said was, "I'm sorry." It came out before I could stop it. I was not sorry to the house. I was sorry to the woman who had stood where I stood and pressed her hands to the door and written it down and crossed out the line that said she was like her mother. I was sorry to the child who had slept in the closet because the door held something off. I was sorry to the part of me that had wanted so badly to fix it that she had tried to bargain with it. I closed the door. I took the chain off. I left it in a coil on the floor. I took the baby gate because we needed it. I took the photo of Leo falling asleep in a patch of sunlight because it showed a world where sunlight was just sunlight. When I stepped outside, Ruth was on the sidewalk. She had her hands in her cardigan pockets and a look that said she had been standing there a while. She nodded at me like we were meeting at the beginning of something and not the end. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" I said. My voice was even. "For not saying anything when you moved in," she said. "Because it's your house, and you get to make it yours. That is what I tell myself. And also because I wasn't sure. And also because I thought if I didn't say it, it wouldn't be true." "What wouldn't?" I said, though we both knew. "That the house keeps track," she said, "of certain people. Not all, not even most, just some." "Children," I said. "Not just," she said. "Mothers. And anyone who wants something so badly, they make a space for it without meaning to." We stood there like two women at a bus stop in a neighborhood that is no one's destination, only a place you pass through. She looked older. I felt older. The house behind us looked like a house, which was the most terrifying thing about it. "Do you want to sell it?" I said, surprising myself. "It was my mother's," she said. "She used to measure us in the closet when my father was drunk because it was the only place he didn't look. She said it was a secret way to grow. I hated the closet for that, and I loved it for that. Both things can be true." I nodded. Both things can be true is something people say when the facts won't line up and you still have to live. "Will you rent it again?" I said. "I always do," she said. "People always need somewhere. I tell myself the house is just a house. I tell myself that if you go in with a plan, it respects you. That's how it was with me. But I also tell myself I am an old woman telling stories to make sense of things she can't control. Maybe it respects certain plans," I said. "Maybe," she said. Did anything happen to the baby?" I looked at the window of the big room and saw our reflection in it, two figures without features in the glare. "He's okay," I said. "We're going to stay with Nate's mom for a while. Then we'll find a place with too much light." She smiled and it changed her face. "That's a good plan," she said. "Do you need the keys?" I said. You left them in my box, she said. I came to see if you were taking the chain or leaving it. It's yours, I said. Do what you want with it. I might leave it, she said, not as a warning, as a choice. I nodded. I went to my car and put the last bag in and looked at the house one more time. I wanted to see it as a building. I didn't. I saw it as a mouth, and I don't mean that in a poetic way. I mean the door looked like lips you don't want to put your hand in. At Nate's mom's, I put Leo down in the playpen in the living room and sat on the floor. He crawled to me and put his head on my knee, which he does now when he's done, and wants me to know he has come back. I let my hand rest on his back and felt the weight of him and the heat and the steady of him and thought, this is the only measurement that matters. Not lines on a door, not dates, not any record of rise. This. That night, he slept with his hands open on either side of his head. He didn't wake. I woke, but that is my body's habit now. I listened to the house we were in breathe the way good houses do, and didn't smell anything but the faint citrus of laundry soap and the ghost of the toast from dinner. In the morning, we took a walk. Cheryl texted a picture of her boys playing in the chalk road and said, "You left your bucket." I said, "Keep it." She sent a heart. Ruth texted and asked for our new address for the deposit, and I sent Nate's mom's and a thank you. She said she would mail it. I didn't care if she did. I did, but not like you think. I don't have an ending where I open a wall and find a shoe. I don't have an ending where the house apologizes or burns or stands empty. I have this. We left. We still smell things sometimes, and maybe we always did and we didn't notice. Leo sometimes points at corners and sometimes he points at birds. He is a baby, and the world is full of corners and birds. He has new scratches on his legs from learning how to walk along the couch. He holds his hands over his ears when the blender goes, and I do too, and we make a joke of it and laugh. When I think about the house, I don't picture the closet first. I picture the pencil lines. Someone took care to make those. Someone held a child steady and kept the pencil flat so the measure would be true. Love is in that, even if fear is in it too. I don't forgive the house for using that. I don't forgive anyone who lets fear in because they wanted love so badly they made a place in the wall for both. But I understand it. That is the worst part. Understanding is a kind of door also. Sometimes when I am holding Leo and he is heavy with sleep and sweat, I whisper into his hair, "I am still here." I don't say it to him. He knows. I say it to myself and to the part of the world that writes in pencil on wood and thinks that makes it true. I say it to the next mother who will stand in a small room and try to decide whether the smell is in her head. I say it because saying it made the woman before me feel like she had a line she could hold on to, and I want to throw that line forward. I am still here. We are too. That's not defiance. That's the inventory I make at the end of the day. Baby, partner, me, hands, breath, light. The rest can knock as much as it wants. I thought leaving would be the end of it. That's what you tell yourself when you pack a car fast and don't look back. Distance is a cure. For a while at Nate's mom's, it felt true. The house she lives in opens like a mouth too, but it says welcome. The floors creak in known ways. The smoke alarm chirps exactly when the battery wants you to notice it, not at some other time that feels personal. There are pictures down the hall of kids with the same ears and chin as Nate, and none of the frames are straight, and no one cares. On the second morning there, Leo woke up laughing. It wasn't because of anything I did. He laughed like the part of him that had been busy doing extra work at night, finally got a day off, and didn't know what to do with it. He wobbled to his feet, holding onto the pack-and-play rail, and said, "Baw," which could mean ball or bottle or just breath. He pointed at the window like, "Look, light," as if he'd invented it. We took him to the park with the low slides. I sat on the bench with a paper cup coffee and watched the other moms. I didn't know any of them. I didn't want to. Not because I'm unfriendly, but because every time my eyes caught someone's, I braced for the small talk, where I'd have to decide which version of our life to show a stranger. "Where do you live?" "Oh, we were over on Harrison for a minute, but it wasn't a fit." "Why?" "You know, old house, weird ducks, or landlord trouble, or it smelled funny. All of those are true-ish, and all of them are lies, and the bigger truth makes people cross their arms." A boy climbed the ladder and his dad said, "Hands first." I counted Leo's breaths without meaning to. When we got back, there was a white envelope in the mail with Ruth's return address. I stood in the kitchen by the sink to open it, because that's where I stand when I don't want anyone else to see my face. The deposit check was there, full amount, and a note on lined paper. It said, "Thank you for leaving it clean." I left the chain. You were not the only ones she had underlined, not the only ones once. And then, as if she'd worried it was too much, she had dragged the pen back over the underline until it looked like a small road. Nate saw the check and put his hand on my shoulder and didn't read the note. He's good like that. The permission to have a private feeling even when the problem has been a shared one. I held the note like it was warm. Then I folded it in half and put it in the drawer with the scissors and takeout menus and the tape that never has the end where you think. A normal drawer. That night we did a normal thing that felt heroic. We talked about an apartment listing Nate had found online. 2nd floor, 2 bedrooms, too bright in the photos the way landlords think white paint can make rent lower. The closet doors looked like real doors, not something you'd hold closed with your back. There was a mailbox with separate little slots and names printed out in neat fonts you could change. Rent was a stretch. We did the math and then did it again, and then made one more number smaller than it should be, like everyone does when they want a thing to work. "Let's go see it," I said. The words made me lightheaded the way standing up too fast does, but in a good way. Fresh blood. A plan. We put the visit on the calendar for Saturday. Every night before then, Leo woke up less. He still woke up, because babies are not advertisements for sleep. But the crying had the normal shape. The smell didn't come. The old monitor behaved. We slept with the door open and the hall light on because I wanted him to see that we hadn't built a tunnel around our bed anymore. On Friday, I did a dumb thing. I washed laundry from the old house I had been avoiding. The last bag of towels and a blanket we used to throw over our legs on the couch. I told myself the towels were just towels. They were, and they weren't. When I opened the washer, the smell came out of the drum. Not strong, not a slap. Just a little cloud of that sweet turned bad that lives behind your teeth. I stood with the lid open until it went away. I ran a rinse just so I could tell myself I did something. I put the towels in the dryer, and when they were done, I held one to my face and smelled only heat. Maybe that's what's wrong with us now. The things that are fine have to prove it. Saturday we saw the place. The landlord was a man who wore a polo shirt tucked into jeans and looked at Nate when he talked about income. and at me when he said 2 bedrooms. There was a faint smell of someone else's cooking and the echo of someone else's furniture. The windows were old, but not the kind that stick their tongues out at you. I opened both closet doors and closed them again without thinking about it, and only realized what I'd done after, and the realization didn't sting as much as I expected. I was tired of being afraid, tired enough to get reckless in the way that is just another word for hope. We applied that afternoon. We made the deposit Monday. We moved in a week later with help from Nate's mom and her cousin, who has a truck and takes payment in pizza, and the kind of gratitude that goes into a holiday card. I put Leo's crib in the room with the morning light. I stuck new stars to the ceiling even though he won't look up when he falls asleep. Only when he wakes and remember, oh yes, I invented light. I took a marker and drew a line on a piece of poster board and taped it to the hallway wall at the height of my knee. No wood, I told Nate. No pencil on doors. I said it like a joke and didn't smile. For the first month we were boring, the good kind. We learned where to put the stroller so the front door would still close. We learned which corner of the couch makes your foot fall asleep. We learned the neighbor's name and his dog's name and the name his dog actually answers to. Leo started clapping every time the microwave beeped, which was my fault for clapping once to make him not cry while the timer screamed. He did not point toward closets. He did not sleep with his hands over his ears. He put his hands on his ears when Nate sang off key on purpose to make me laugh. He's a critic already. The first time it pushed at us again, it didn't come as a smell or a noise. It came as a word. I was sitting on the carpet in Leo's room, putting tiny socks in a pile that doesn't stay a pile, and he was standing with one hand on the dresser drawer, doing that squat stand squat that's practiced for walking. He looked over my head, not at the closet because the closet in this place is a sliding kind with a mirror that makes a fun baby appear, but at the corner where the 2 walls meet, and a spider lives sometimes. He lifted his hands to his ears and said very clearly, up. That's not his word for up. His word for up is, He flings his arms at me and says, and I lift him because I am a predictable machine. Up, I said back, like that solves it. You want up? He said it again, but different. He didn't ask. He said it like a reminder. Up. The way you say it when you're not pointing at your body at all. He looked at the corner until his eyes watered, and I looked too, because it's automatic. Nothing was there. I put him in my lap and he relaxed like I'd pressed a button. That night I went back to the notebook I'd kept in the old house. I'd shoved it in a moving box, and then shoved the box in the closet here, and pretended we didn't own either. I took it out and put it on the kitchen table under the stupid light fixture that tries to look like glass leaves. I ran my finger down the sentences I'd written that sounded more like numbers than weeks. Chain pulled, smell, lines, scratches, dream. I found the sentence from the paper I stole and lost and found and lost. When she says up and means the other thing. I closed the notebook and put both hands flat on the cover like I was keeping a bird inside. My skin went cold in that slow way that starts at the wrists and climbs. Hey, Nate said behind me, coming in with Leo under one arm and the laundry under the other. What are you doing? Choosing, I said. It came out sharper than I meant. Choosing what? He said, gentle. Because he's learned to go slow around certain words in our house the way you go slow around an animal that can bite, even if you love it. I'm not making room for this, I said. not with words. "Okay," he said. "He's good at okay." He set the laundry down. He put Leo in my lap. My son grabbed the notebook and tried to eat it because he is a goat in a boy's body, and paper is his joy. I took it away and put it in the trash. Not the recycle, the trash. I took the bag out and tied it. I walked down the stairs and out to the bins and slid it in and let the lid fall with a real noise that made a pigeon move. I stood there in the nowhere behind our building with my hands empty and my heart pounding and felt ridiculous and clean. Nothing changed because of that. Or everything did. These are the two ways to say the same thing. Leo learned to walk like a drunk in a hurry. His eyebrows became expressive in a way that makes me wonder what faces live in the world he sees when I'm not looking. He eats blueberries like they owe him money. He says dog when he hears a dog, and also when he sees a picture of a cow. And I don't correct him because I too am getting tired of getting the world right. He sometimes wakes at night and cries that low, offended cry that says a tooth is coming, or a dream was too big. I go in. I pick him up. He molds around me like he was poured for that. He looks at the corner sometimes, because corners are interesting. I say, "There's nothing there," but not like I'm trying to convince anything except the part of my chest that still sleeps light. We drew his first line on the poster board. He was standing holding onto the wall with one hand and laughing because the marker cap was a sound he liked. I made the mark and wrote the date and his name. I wrote it big, not neat, because I wanted it loud. "This is where we do it," I told him, "if we do it at all." He patted the paper like he was proud. 2 days later, I found a pencil mark on the inside of the hall closet door in our new place. Low, neat, nothing else. I stood staring at it so long my coffee went cold in my hand. I didn't shout for Nate. I didn't rub it out. I didn't take a picture. I closed the door. I went and got the poster board and taped it over the seam where the closet door closes and put blue tape all the way around like a ridiculous seal. If the door was going to eat anything, it would have to eat our loudness first. I didn't tell Nate until that night. We were sitting on the couch with the TV on mute like a fake fireplace. "There was a mark," I said, "in the hall closet." He didn't say where. He said, "Okay, and then, what did you do?" "Tape the poster up," I said, and he laughed. A small puff, half nerves, half relief that I still exist in the world of doing things that can be undone with a fingernail. "Good," he said. "Good." "Are we crazy?" I asked, because someone always has to ask. "We are parents," he said. "Same thing." I told my sister, because she's the only person I can say these sentences to without her trying to pick just one explanation and offering it like medicine. "He said up," I said, like the note. She went quiet. Then she said, "Okay. Do you want me to say it's a phase? Or do you want me to say, come stay with us? Or do you want me to say, I believe you?" "Just tell me something normal," I said. "Normal," she said. "Normal is you're tired, and he's learning 15 things at once, and his brain is a spaghetti factory, and sometimes brains put sauce in the wrong bowl. Normal is closet doors are terrible design, and if I ever own a house, I'll have exposed rods on the wall like a store. Normal is you still have to brush your teeth and eat and go to the park and text me pictures of the baby chewing on the wrong end of a carrot." I sent her a picture of him chewing on the wrong end of a carrot. I wrote, "Normal." She wrote back a heart and a skull like she couldn't decide which was more appropriate. A month in, we had a new routine. I would put Leo down and stand in the doorway and count to 30 the way the sleep book says you should when you think he might just need a minute to figure his body out. Nate would sit on the couch and scroll through apartment listings anyway, because knowing you could leave even when you don't plan to is a kind of control. Sometimes we would be in bed at the same time. That felt like wealth. Some nights the monitor would go dark for a blink. I resented the blink more than I should have. I kept doing it, checking the edges to see if they were holding. I put a chair in front of the hall closet because I am not as brave as my taped poster board suggests. I started closing doors gently instead of fast, because fast made my stomach fall. I woke once with my hands pressed to my ears and wanted to scream at my body, "Stop it." And then I was immediately kind to that body, because it has been so good to me, carrying my son, and then carrying my fear. Then a woman in the parents' group at the library said, in a room full of fluorescent light and songs about toes, "Does anyone's kid sleep with their hands over their ears?" My eyes found her like we were two magnets. She had a baby on her lap about Leo's age. The baby was chewing on the corner of a board book. The woman's face had that look, like a wet sweater, heavy and stretched in ways it wasn't meant to be. I felt my whole body lurch forward before my brain caught up. I was going to say, yes, 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 and then pour our whole house into her hands. I wanted to give her the note. I wanted to tell her to get a chain. I wanted to tell her to run. But I saw her jaw quiver and thought, if I put this on her now, she will take it home, and it will grow teeth on the ride. I said, mine does when there's a truck outside, or the blender, or when his dad sings. We do it too. We make it a game. I put my hands lightly over my ears and laughed a little, not fake, because the picture of Nate doing Sinatra and Leo pressing his palms to his ears is actually funny. It might be a sound at night that's new. Our radiator has its own little drama. She exhaled like I had pulled a weed out of her throat. The librarian started another song. The woman looked at me when we were packing up and said, "Thanks." And I said, "Do you want to walk?" And we did, 2 strollers making that rhythm on the sidewalk. She told me her landlord wouldn't fix the window that lets in cold, and the baby wakes like he's been dipped. She told me her mother says she's spoiling him. She told me she hasn't had a full night since August, and that she cried this morning because she brushed her teeth with her kid's toothpaste, and it tasted like the inside of a toy. I told her about the way oatmeal turns into cement in the bowl if you forget it for 10 minutes. I didn't tell her about the chain. I'm not saying that's virtuous. I'm saying I had learned. There are times you carry a weight for someone, not because you're stronger, but because you're already carrying it, and your hands have formed to it. Back at our place, we put Leo down for his nap. He slept the way babies sleep when they have played hard and eaten real fat, and laughed from the belly, like a person who believes the room will hold them while they are gone. I sat on the hall floor with my back to the closet. I didn't press. I just sat. I felt the cool come through the wood. I counted to all the numbers I know. When I stood up, there were fresh pencil lines on the outside of the door. Not low, not high, the height of my hip. No names, no dates. For a second I felt the old run of panic, electric and pure. Then I went to the kitchen and got the tape and a pen. I drew our line on the poster board higher than any of the pencil lines, a thick black stripe like a mistake you don't apologize for. I wrote, "Not here." I taped the board over the pencil lines. I pressed the tape with the heel of my hand until the heat made it stick. In the months since, it has tried smaller things. Once, the monitor video froze while the audio kept going, and the audio was the sound machine but pitched a little wrong, 2 notes off, like a recorder played by a kid who didn't want to be at lessons. I unplugged it and plugged it back in, and the world went back to the key I know. Once, a smell lifted off a box of clothes we hadn't opened since we moved, and I put the clothes in the tub and poured vinegar on them like I was dressing a salad. Nate came in and said, "Is this a ritual?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Then I support it." And we left them to soak until the smell was gone or I couldn't smell it anymore. Clothes are only clothes. Once, Leo stood at the hall closet, not the bedroom one, and put his palm on the seam like he was feeling a pulse. He was quiet the way he is when he is trying a new idea. I went and stood behind him and put my hand over his hand and counted to 10 out loud, calm, not a daring. "Okay," I said. "Now snack." And he let my hand turn his hand, and we walked toward the kitchen like that, palms together. We didn't look back. And once, after a long day that started with him learning how to get on the couch and ended with him falling off and crying like the world had betrayed him, I took a shower after he was finally asleep, and I stood there with my face under the water until my skin hurt, and I said out loud, to the apartment or to myself or to whatever, "I know what you want. You want to be measured. You want to be written down. You want to be real." I felt the heat fill the space around me. Not a presence, just physics. "No," I said. "No more marks in places I can't take with me. If I write anything, it's in a book I throw out." I don't know if that did anything. I slept that night like a person who had done a hard chore and put the tools away. Ruth left a voicemail once in the winter. "We've got a couple moving in," she said. "They have a baby too." I told them the water takes a minute to get hot. I didn't tell them the other thing because I still don't know how to say it without hearing myself from the outside. She cleared her throat. "I left the chain. They can take it down if they want." I deleted the message, and then undeleted it, and listened again, and then let it go. I don't know if I did the right thing walking away from her house without putting a warning in someone's hand. I just know if anyone had tried to warn me a year ago, I would have nodded and smiled and put the warning in my back pocket and sat on it, and then found it later crumpled and unreadable and blamed myself. Sometimes the best you can do is loosen your jaw and say to your child, "Tell me where it hurts," and hold them while they tell you in pieces. We still measure Leo, but not every month. Not the way people do when they think growth is something you can shepherd with a pen. Sometimes we forget for a while, and then he puts on a shoe and it doesn't fit, and we laugh because the world is doing what it's supposed to do, without asking us. Our poster board has lines and dates, and one smudge where he ran his hand over a fresh mark, and it's smeared. And I love the smear most. It looks like movement, which is what this all is. He is bigger now. He has words like blocks he stacks and then knocks over. Car, no, yes, more, no more, mama, dada, dog, bird, mine, please, help, up. He uses up for the normal thing now, arms lifted to me, face trusting the way he does when he's about to step off something too high because he knows I catch him. He still points at corners because corners exist. Sometimes when he does, a shameful part of me thinks, do I? Did I make that? And then another part, kinder, says, he's a kid. He sees edges. The news is not always bad. Sometimes I still wake with my hands over my ears. When I do, I don't yank them down like I used to. I let them sit there for a minute and I breathe and I say, okay, okay. That was the old job. Then I lift them and I listen to the apartment we live in, the building, the street with its trash truck, and the man on the corner who whistles bad jazz at 7 in the morning. And I think, this is where the sound comes from. I get up. I go to my child. He is usually sideways in his crib with his blanket over his face like he's grown up to spite safe sleep posters. And I pull it down and he rolls and sighs. And that is the only proof I have ever needed that the world is worth the trouble. I still sometimes whisper into his hair, I am still here. He says it back without words. And in the smallest part of me, the part that does not give lectures to the air anymore, I say it to the woman with the neat hand. Me too. We are too. I know now that we is a bigger thing than marriages and leases. It includes the women who leave notes in closets, and the ones who tape poster boards to doors, and the ones who don't have closets, and sleep on couches, and the ones who move again and again, and never get to buy a new chain. We don't get to choose where the fear tries us. We do get to choose where we measure. We get to choose who we hold on to when the door rattles. We get to choose to teach our children that some knocks you answer, and some you don't. A couple weeks ago, I took Leo to the little museum with the stuffed bear in a glass case. The one every kid in this city ends up pointing at, and then backing away from. He pressed his hand to the glass, and the sticky outline of some other kid's hand lined up with his. He laughed. He didn't look at the corner of the room. He looked at the bear like, imagine this, a whole animal that doesn't move. The guard smiled. I felt that feeling that comes sometimes now for no reason. A lightness that isn't denial. More like a room aired out. We got home and he napped and I sat in the hall and looked at the taped poster board and thought about taking it down. Then I didn't, because you can leave some things up just to remind yourself of a decision you made once and keep making. There's a new mom at the park. I saw her yesterday. She was wearing a sweatshirt with the neck stretched out the way fabric goes when it's been pulled and pulled. Her baby kept opening and closing his hands in the air. She looked at me and said, "Do you ever smell something and you can't find it?" And I felt the old rails under my feet. I wanted to say, "Tell me everything." I wanted to hand her a chain and a poster board and a list of words to use and words to avoid if she ever finds herself in a room with someone official. Instead, I said, "When I had COVID last year, I smelled smoke for a week and there wasn't any." Brains do strange things. But if it's the trash, it's always the trash. She laughed. "Text me," I said. "I live 2 blocks over. Walk with me," we did. The babies slept with their mouths open. The wind had that metallic taste it gets before rain. We walked anyway. That is the whole trick, I think. You walk anyway. If you're waiting for me to say it's over, I can't. It's not that kind of story. It's a life. We got an apartment and a second-hand rug, and a kid who insists all buses are trains. And we got the thing that moved our hands toward the door in the night whether we wanted them to or not. It probably lives where we live because what it wanted was a place inside understanding. But it's quieter now. Or I am. Or both. We don't measure on wood. We don't write what it wants. When fear asks me to hold the door, I put my back against something else. My son's weight, Nate's hand, a friend's text at 11 that just says, "You up?" Me neither. And I hold that. On the day he turns 2, I will make him a cake that looks like nothing and tastes like sugar. We will put one candle not because we forgot how to count, but because one is enough to blow. He will practice putting his hands over his ears when we all shout. He will laugh because he is still the kind of person who loves a surprise. We will draw a line on the poster board and write the date in fat letters. We'll put it back up with tape that peels the paint a little. We will keep doing that until he is too tall to care, or we are too tired to keep track. Then we'll roll the poster up and shove it in the same drawer as Ruth's note, and the scissors and the tape with no end. And one day we'll find it, and look and say, "Oh, remember when he was new." At night sometimes when I'm awake for whatever reason, I think about the house we left. I picture it without me in it. I picture the couple Ruth rented to. I hope they don't need the chain. I hope if they do, they're people who stick it up straight and steady on the first try. I hope their baby sleeps with his hands open. If the door rattles, I hope they sit together and say, "Okay, okay, okay," until the word loses all its shape, but keeps its strength. If it asks them to write it down, I hope they lie. I hope they draw pictures of sunshine and dogs and tape them to the closet and let them fall. And every time they pick them up, they say, "This is nothing. This is paper." And then they go back to bed and hold on to the thing that won't let go of them. I am still here. We are too. That was a promise I made to myself in a room I didn't want to be in. It's easier to keep out here where the hall light doesn't hum like a tune you don't want stuck in your head. But even if we ended up back there, even if we find ourselves one day in some other version, a different town, different landlord, same ache of wanting to be good at this and never being sure, we know what to do with our hands. We know what to measure and what to let stay uncounted. We know how to say no, not here, and yes, you can sleep, and sorry, and okay. That's all it is. That's the scary part and the not scary part together. You think the horror is in the house, and it is, a little. But the real part is how you learn to live with a thing you can't prove and choose anyway, always, to hold your child and say, "I hear you. I smell what you smell. I see the corner. Now look at me. Up." And he does, and he will. And for as long as I can carry him, I will.